Chapter 6 in EWA. Alright, number 1 is the first problem that I chose for you, and I have a set of data points there, and I could have entered that into, say, the TI list and then a one variable statistics, so I didn't have to do any of these things by hand, which would mean that these values that they gave me here of 220 and there's a couple others that they gave me, I don't really need those anyway because I'm just going to do the statistics using a calculator, or in this case I'm using stat key. The first thing I'm going to do is copy my data using my right click options. Then I'm at stat key and you can just copy the URL there. I'm going to hit edit data. I don't care about the data label, but it likes it in there. And I'm just going to right click and paste my data in. Once that is complete, then I'm just going to say OK. It's going to run some statistics on my data. I've got a nice little chart. You have a question there that asks you what's the probability that your data is greater than 10, and so you can just count the dots here, your actual data points. It's really handy. Over in this area, I've got the summary statistics, and it was really easy. I didn't have to key anything, and I could just copy and paste, which I love to do. Oh, and of course, if you wanted to, you could have a histogram of the data, a little box plot of the data. See how nice that is, and then you could just snag that image, and you could put it into whatever report it is that you're going to do. Alright, so now you've seen that I've got my data points. I've got my statistics, actually, my summary. I use this data. It says calculate a point estimate. That point estimate is just going to be my mean. In other words, that is X bar. Just wrote the value in from my, right here, my values from my stat key. So let's see. The median was 7.7, so that's what I entered there. The mean, 8.156, entered him. And let's see what I have next. Right, here's my summary statistics. I got them again. Standard deviation, 1.669, just keep that in. That's the spread of data. Of course, it was my standard deviation, my sample standard deviation. And for this question D here, I just went over to my chart and I counted all those that were over 10 megapascals, and I happened to get 4 out of 27. So the probability, or the p-hat, that it's greater than 10 would be, I just counted the ones that were over that, so that would have been 4 out of 27. Right, this told me to calculate the point estimate of coefficient for variation. I just did what they told me. My estimate for standard deviation, I believe, was 1.669. And my estimate for the mean was, let's see, I think this one was 8.156. And I just did that division, and I just did what they told me, which was the estimate for each of those things up. What I did was I used my TI-84 to do my one variable statistics, so I wouldn't have to do any of this by hand, once again, because I don't like to do anything by hand. And they asked me to calculate point estimate for the mean. So 1 point, there it is right there. There's my mean. That's X bar. The median, if you scroll down, you'll see where it says median, and I just wrote down the median for that. They asked me a couple of questions on this. They not only say, what did you use? And of course I said it was the median, but they said, what could you have used? And I could have used the regular mean for this, the X bar. For my next problem, I'm going to need my Z table. They want the point estimate that separates the largest 10% of all values. That means looking at your 90th percentile. So I go to my 90th percentile, and I'm going to need the 1.28 z-tail score on this one. Using these scores for the estimate for the mean, the estimate for my standard deviation, and the 1.28 that I get from my one-tail 90th percentile, I'll just crunch those numbers and I get the 1.7684. This is my state which estimator, use the 90th percentile. For my next problem, and you get to see, you get to see in here where I have run these numbers in my calculator. This was my proportion for, or my probability that the thickness was less than 1.3, so I did a normal CDF. There's my negative infinity, there's my 1.3, which was my upper bound. Then I had my mean and my estimator for standard deviation. Crunch the numbers in my TA E/4, and there's what I end up with. This bottom 1E question tells me I need to give them the estimated standard error of x bar, so let me write that down. There's my formula for my estimated standard error. My standard deviation hat, sorry about that, is 0.3283 divided by the square root of however many data points there were. I believe there were 16. If you'll crunch those numbers, you'll get the 0.082. And that's all there is. And that concludes your Chapter 6 homework. All the problems from there on are very similar.